Coming up on Network Africa. At least 61 people killed in an overnight funeral attack in Ntoyo, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Ghana welcomes first group of West African nationals deported from the United States. Plus, the World Food Programme lauds notable progress of Africa as the continent leads in feeding millions of children through national school meal programs. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 61 people have been killed in an overnight attack in Ntoyo, a village in the eastern part of the country. Reports suggest the Allied Democratic Forces are responsible for the assault. A survivor, Isidore Sindani, says upon return in the morning, they were shocked to find so many people killed and houses still burning. Residents have continued to collect bodies with assistance from the Congolese army. Meanwhile, the military insists that the army remains in control in that region, reinforcing troops to secure the region, stressing that the country is working in depth together with Uganda. Now, the ADF rebels, originally formed in Uganda and reportedly affiliated with ISIS, have intensified their activity in eastern Congo in recent years, exploiting instability and local conflicts to carry out deadly attacks on civilians. A new report from the Human Rights Watch has warned of rising number of attacks on civilians from Islamic State-affiliated militants in Niger. Drawing on around 30 testimonies collected between May and July this year, 2025, the findings reveal that the IS group is executed or has executed more than 127 civilians in 5 attacks in the Tillabéri region in western Niger. The extremist group reportedly also looted homes and burned them to the ground. According to data, about 1,600 civilians have been killed since July of 2023, when Nigerian armed forces overthrew the government in a coup. Human Rights Watch says the attacks amount to apparent war crimes and violation of international humanitarian law. We are now in Ghana, where President John Mahama has announced that the country has formally agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States under the immigration policies pursued by President Donald Trump's administration. President Mahama stressed that the first group of 14 deportees, most of them from Nigeria, along with one Gambian, have already arrived in Accra. He also highlighted that the West African Protocol on Free Movement allows any West African citizen to enter Ghana and stay for up to 90 days, adding that the country has no problem accepting these nationals. Ghana has become the latest African country to accept people deported from the U.S. as part of its campaign against undocumented migrants, including Rwanda, which has agreed to take in up to 250 deportees, as well as Eswatini, Uganda, and South Sudan.
First, we were slapped with 10% tariff that was increased to 15%, and then we're included in 36 countries that were going to be placed on a visa ban. But in the meantime, all 5-year visas were cancelled, and we were restricted to single entry 3 months. It shows the tightening situation in our foreign relations, but I do think that we still enjoy good relations with the United States of America. We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the U.S. And we agreed with them that West African nationals, were acceptable, because all our fellow West Africans don't need a visa to come to our country. So if they decided to travel from U.S. to Accra, they don't need a visa anyway. So if you're bringing our colleague West Africans back, that's okay. And so I think that agreement has been activated, and a first batch of 14 nationals came. Several of them were our Nigerian brothers. They opted to go back home And so we facilitated, we put them on buses, to be able to go back home. One of them was a Gambian who it's not as easy. You have to get him an air ticket to be able to facilitate his travel. So what we've done is contacted their embassy to let them know of his presence so that they can facilitate his return to Gambia. And so that's the issue with regards to deportations and arrivals. West Africa has the protocol of free movement. And so any West African is free to come to Ghana and be able to stay for 90 days.
President John Mahama of Ghana there. So joining us now is our Sahel correspondent, Mo Sani Aliu. He joins us from Tamale, Ghana. Great to have you on Network Africa.
Thank you for having me on your show, Ayo.
Yes. So what has been the public reaction, Mo, in Ghana to the government's decision to accept third country nationals deported from the U.S., especially when some of these individuals are not Ghanaian citizens?
Well, initially, there was some misgiving from the people I spoke to on the streets of Tamale here in northern Ghana. They expressed some misgivings, saying that why should their country be a dumping ground for people that were supposed to have been sent straight to their countries of origin. Unfortunately, that sentiment is not being shared by the media here. Maybe mainly because the president, John Dramani Mahama, he explained clearly that these Nigerians are not supposed to stay or did not even stay back in Ghana. Of all the 14 deportees that he spoke to, 13 have already left the country. They are back in Nigeria as we speak. So people on the streets of Tamale were also, if you remember, talking about the recent trouble between Nigerians who live here in Ghana, who had some issue with their residential brothers here who said Nigerians should leave. So it's a mixed bag. Ghanaians initially were unhappy with that the U.S. is dumping, as they say, these deportees here in Ghana. That is the situation as I see it today.
It's interesting you pointed out that situation. I'm talking about some Ghanaian nationals protesting, as it were, over Nigerians or some Nigerians asking them to leave their country. But let me ask you, Mo, how does the Ghanaian government justify accepting deportees, from other West African countries under the ECOWAS Free Movement Protocol? And is this protocol being stretched, beyond its intended purpose?
Interesting point you make there. The Ghanaian president, if you recall in his speech, just mentioned that the U.S. has virtually twisted the arms of the Ghanaian government by placing the government, Ghana, among 36 countries who will certainly be on a list of 36 countries who will be on a 15% tariff. This will stretch the cost of doing business with the U.S. Remember, Ghana is the U.S.'s sixth largest. So the U.S. is Ghana's sixth largest trading partner, as it is. So Ghana is afraid that if they do not acquiesce to the U.S. Or they do not agree to what the U.S. is demanding from it, that the issue will become worse. The Ghanaian president alluded to the fact that the situation, the relationship between Ghana and the U.S. is not in the best of terms, but he hopes that by acquiescing to the U.S. demands, by agreeing to take in these people, these deportees, the government may end up finding a solution, to solving the problem, this intractable problem between Ghana and the U.S. Ayo.
So, which perhaps begs the question, has there been any pressure or, economic pressure or diplomatic or even otherwise, from the U.S. government that may have influenced Ghana's decision to comply with this deportation agreement? I know you've tried to touch on it a little bit, but, is there something larger that we're seeing? Or behind the scenes, rather?
I spoke, before this program started, I spoke to a diplomat via WhatsApp, and he said that these situations are very, very touchy. No government wants to be singled out, especially when it comes to the matters of trade, the economy, and politics. Right now, a lot of countries are actually allowing these deportations to take place because they are finding it really very difficult to find other solutions to the problem of trade between the U.S. and those countries. So Ghana specifically has this challenge of seen to be friendly towards the U.S., but also to being friendly, to its neighboring countries, to brothers from West Africa, African solidarity and all whatnot. So the U.S. government is indirectly putting a lot of pressure on the Ghanaian government. And 4 other nations, we know Eswatini, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Sudan have also accepted to receive deportees from the U.S. And all of them have done so under one form of duress or the other. That is what I have garnered from what I discussed with the Ghanaians on the street and a diplomat here in Tamale. Ayo.
Interesting, Mo. Well, one wonders perhaps if this is just going to be a one-off, or we're going to be seeing more of this, in the coming perhaps weeks or months or even years ahead, as far as the Trump administration is concerned, in the U.S. But right about now, what mechanisms or resources do you think Ghana has put in place, to handle the reintegration or transit of these deportees, particularly the non-Ghanaians? And how sustainable is this approach going forward?
It's interesting you alluded to the topic of, getting more deportees to arrive here in Africa. These 14 are certainly not the last deportees that will be sent to Ghana. Eswatini has accepted to receive, I think, 250 deportees already. And there are a lot of West Africans that are going to be deported. And Ghana has just given the green light for the U.S. to send them back home. Nigeria, if you remember, has not agreed to do so, which is interesting. But Ghana is actually saying, or the government of Ghana is saying that, okay, the ECOWAS protocol, which has been stretched, as you said, beyond its intended target, is actually serving the purpose of bringing in broader West African countries' citizens to come and to pass through Ghana. So Ghana is seeing this as just a transit point. It's not an arrangement that it thinks that will take much more effort than just being a transit thing. Most of these West Africans already can pass through Ghana and go to other West Africans or stay in Ghana for 90 days, as the president of Ghana said. So it's interesting that Ghana is seeing this, even with the pressure from the U.S., but Ghana is seeing this as helping its brother nations, brother West African countries. Citizens from such countries now can arrive in Ghana and then move over to their countries. They, use Ghana as a transit point. That is what I think the government of Ghana is doing here. We will see if that works out, but it's early days, given the fact that there are hundreds and thousands of deportees waiting to be repatriated back to their home countries, especially here in West Africa. Ayo.
Well, we'll certainly leave it at that. Many thanks, and thank you for your time indeed, Mo Sanialia from Tamale, Ghana.
Thank you for having me.
The latest edition of the State of School Feeding Worldwide, a flagship biennial report released by the United Nations World Food Programme, revealed that nearly 80 million more children are now supported by national school meal programs worldwide, with a 20% increase over 2020. Addressing the press from Copenhagen's WFP's Director of School Meals and Social Protection, Carmen Bourbano, says of those 80 million children that are being reached in addition to what was already done in 2020, about 60% are in low-income countries. The report adds that Africa is leading the surge with an additional 20 million children now fed through national school meal programs, with notable progress in Kenya, Madagascar, Ethiopia, and Rwanda.
Today we are announcing that 466 million children are receiving meals in schools. This is the largest food assistance program for children worldwide. The good news is that over the last 4 years, an additional 80 million children have received meals compared to where we were in 2020. This is unprecedented progress. We have not seen a scale-up of a program of this magnitude in at least a decade, and most of it is due to government mobilization and domestic investments. Of those 80 million children that are being reached in addition to what was already done in 2020, about 60% of those are in low-income countries, which tell us that even through fiscal crises and through financial hardship, low-income countries where children need these programs the most are making enormous efforts to make sure that their children are protected during crises and their futures are secured. Africa is the continent with the most impressive progress. More than 20 million children are additionally receiving meals in schools in the continent. 99% of the investment is coming from government budgets. This means that this is a program, this is a global priority, funded primarily by governments. Donor support accounts only for 1 or 2% of global investment in these programs.
Still to come on Network Africa. United Nations mission in South Sudan reaches vulnerable communities with high-powered all-terrain vehicles known as SHERPs. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Let's now shift gears to South Africa, where the Human Rights Commission has strongly condemned ongoing attempts to block undocumented foreign nationals from accessing medical care at public facilities. Commissioner Professor Shepo Madin-Lungozi stressed that it is unlawful to deny or remove anyone from healthcare services, regardless of their documentation status.
We disagree that foreigners, non-nationals, should be scapegoated for the problems in the healthcare system. Number two, we were very clear that it's unlawful for any citizen or anyone to try to enforce immigration laws. No one is allowed to play the role that is supposed to be played by Home Affairs. Number three, we've engaged with the National Police Commissioner, we've engaged with the National Health Department to say that they must do their work, which is policing, which is ensuring that everyone is able to access healthcare. So very, very clear, the answer is very, very clear that it is unlawful to prevent anyone, either documented or undocumented, from accessing healthcare. And I can also disclose that in the next couple of days, we'll also be announcing further measures to curb these practices.
Nigeria's presence at the upcoming G20 summit in South Africa is important as Africa needs visible voices at the global event. The comment was made by Nigeria's acting High Commissioner to South Africa, Alexander Ajayi, as he answered questions from the MTN Media Innovation Program Cohort 4 during their study visit to South Africa. He says Africa needs representation at the event similar to that of countries in Europe, despite the presence of the European Union.
He wanted Nigeria to be the second African country in the G20, and he put it as a challenge to the president of South Africa. And reacting to that, the president of South Africa mentioned that South Africa will do everything possible to support Nigerian people. What are we bringing? We are bringing a lot. You will recall that we recently rebased our economy, and that has also brought in some fundamentals that were outside the competition of our GDP before into the GDP. And many of you reported that it has now increased the size of our economy by 30%. You understand? And when you look at that's one key area that gives us a kind of green light to the G20 because we are doing something on the economy. And you also recall the 4 tax bill that were recently signed into law, which when is fully implemented, you're going to see a kind of what we call it increase in terms of revenue that comes to the government in terms of money that comes to government revenue, and in terms of how this investable fund are applied to different critical sectors that are germane to fundamental areas that G20 look at. But more fundamentally is that when you look at the geography of the G20, when you look at the Asia, you find 2 or 3 countries in the G20. I can mention Indonesia, I can mention Japan, I can mention South Korea, I can mention China, who from the Asian side, who are part of the G20. When you go to Europe, you find more than 3 or 4. France is there, Germany is there, EU as a body is there, you understand, in the G20. Go to the Latin American countries, you find Brazil there, you find Mexico there, and you find, if I'm not mistaken, you find another country there, you understand. Then you go to the oceanic area, you find Australia there in the G20. Why is Africa having one country in the continent? The size of the country, only one country in the G20.
Also, the acting High Commissioner has also says it is easier for South Africans to get a visa to Nigeria than for Nigerians to get a visa to South Africa.
The Home Office here in South Africa and the mission, they are not really in synergy, you understand? And that's why it delays at time. Many South Africans that apply for visas here, you understand, they get it within 24 hours. Within 24 hours. Because there's a standing presidential directive to all the missions that all investment visas must be processed within 24 hours, and you don't delay it. The only thing they complain about, which I've seen, because I must say it, I must be fair, is the cost in terms of the cost of our visas compared to theirs. They complain that our own is more, we charge them more. You understand, which only the immigration could explain the procedures involved in that, you understand. But in terms of the duration and the time of processing, our own is not, I think every South African own in Nigeria is about 10 days, you understand, because of 14 days or so. But here, we don't do 5 days. It's 48 hours, at most, except there's a local objection. If there are reasons, ground for us to suspect that maybe there's something to that visa, then it will be delayed.
A persistently volatile security situation combined with Upper Nile State's proximity to war-torn Sudan has turned the South Sudanese town of Malakal into a critical hub for internally displaced persons, refugees and returning South Sudanese citizens fleeing conflict across the northern border. In response to the growing humanitarian needs, a high-level delegation led by Anita Kikibego, Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General and the UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator, has traveled to Malakal. The delegation is engaging with local authorities, displaced communities and key stakeholders to assess the evolving situation, evaluate preparedness measures and identify urgent humanitarian needs on the ground.
I must say that the meeting with the governor and the ministers was extremely helpful. I think the good news story here is that when we come together, it is possible to make a difference. Meeting with the IDPs, those who are displaced within the camp, they are clear, they want to go back. What they need is safety, they need services, water, food, education, healthcare, which would be possible even in these very difficult times.
We have decided in prioritizing and based on the accessibility and the funding that we have. We are now, our priority locations include Makal County and Ulang and Fashoda and Nasir. But some of these places also depend on the accessibility. And these are the hotspot areas in terms of flooding.
Help peacekeepers serving with the United Nations mission in South Sudan reach vulnerable communities isolated on small pockets of land among a sea of water in South Sudan. The Indian government has deployed high-powered all-terrain vehicles known as Sherps. Colonel Arjun Kumar Butola from Indian Peacekeeping Battalion Commander in Jonglei says this will help the range of the patrols increase to about 60 kilometers, and they have also been out for long-duration patrols where they have done approximately 100 to 150 kilometers in 2 days.
Earlier, if you see, the range of the foot patrol was approx 5 kilometers in the wet season. And the present B vehicles which we have, the range were enhanced to 10 to 15 kilometers only. But after the induction of the SHERP, the range of the patrols has been increased to around approx 60 kilometers. And they have also been out for long duration patrols where they have done approx 100 to 150 kilometers in 2 days. The water currents in the rivers during the rainy seasons is a little higher, and it's very difficult to navigate the current. Otherwise, they are able to cross the rivers when the currents are within the limits. And the third, which we have seen, the black cotton soil, it gets stuck to the tires of the shops, and very difficult for the individual to get inside the vehicle or get under the vehicle to repair it.
By the addition of this vehicle in our peacekeeping mission, their efforts and their reach have reached to the larger population, and this will help. I am confident, I am sure this will help them, to provide more peace and security to the communities here and in this region.
And just before we go, did you know the newly inaugurated Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD, is Africa's largest dam, also one of the 20 biggest hydroelectric dams in the world, at about 1/4 of the capacity of China's Three Gorges Dam. Built on the Blue Nile River in Ethiopia, GERD is not only a record-breaking hydroelectric project, but also a symbol of African ambition and self-reliance. It's expected to generate over 6,000 megawatts of electricity. That's just enough to power millions of homes across the region. And that's Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun.